William sat in his old blue car outside the house he had called home for 8 years. His hands were shaking as he held the steering wheel. He could not stop them from shaking no matter how hard he tried. The house looked the same as always. The white fence was still there. The red roses Katherine had planted were still blooming in the front yard. The mailbox still had their family name written in black letters. But everything felt different now. Everything felt wrong. Katherine was sitting next to him in the passenger seat. She had been crying for 3 hours straight. Her eyes were red and swollen. The tissue in her hands was wet and torn from all the tears. She kept looking at the house and then looking away. She could not make herself get out of the car. She could not make herself walk through that front door. Not today. Maybe not ever. They had been living at Katherine's mother's house for 2 months now. 2 long months of sleeping in the guest bedroom. 2 months of eating breakfast at someone else's table. 2 months of trying to pretend everything was normal when nothing was normal anymore. Katherine's mother had been kind. She had cooked their meals and washed their clothes. She had taken care of Emma when William and Katherine could barely take care of themselves. But they could not stay there forever. They knew that. Everyone knew that Emma was their 8-year-old daughter. She had been asking the same question every single day for 2 months. "When can we go home, Daddy? When can we go back to our house, Mommy?" She missed her own bedroom. She missed her toys. She missed her friends in the neighborhood. She missed playing in the backyard where William had built her a swing set last summer. But most of all, she missed her baby brother Thomas. Thomas would have been 7 months old today. He would have been sitting up by himself now. He would have been eating baby food and making funny faces. He would have been crawling around the living room and getting into everything. He would have been laughing at Emma when she made silly sounds. He would have been doing all the things that babies do. But Thomas was not doing any of those things. Thomas was never going to do any of those things. William remembered the morning it happened, like it was yesterday. He had been getting ready for work. Katherine had been in the kitchen making coffee. Emma had been eating her cereal and talking about the spelling test she had that day. It was a normal Tuesday morning. Nothing special about it. Nothing different from any other Tuesday morning. William had kissed Katherine goodbye. He had hugged Emma and told her to have a good day at school. He had looked in on Thomas, who was sleeping peacefully in his crib. The baby looked so perfect. Lying there, his little chest was going up and down. His tiny hands were curled into fists. His face was calm and peaceful. William had gone to work thinking it would be just another regular day. He had meetings to attend. He had phone calls to make. He had reports to finish. He was thinking about all the normal things that people think about on a Tuesday morning. He was not thinking that his life was about to change forever. He was not thinking that in just a few hours he would get the phone call that would destroy everything. The phone call came at 10:30 in the morning. William was in his office when his phone rang. He saw Katherine's name on the screen and smiled. She usually called him around this time to tell him about her morning. Sometimes she would tell him funny things that Emma had said. Sometimes she would remind him to pick up milk on the way home. Sometimes she just called to say she loved him. But this time was different. This time, Katherine was screaming. William could barely understand what she was saying. She was crying and screaming at the same time. She kept saying Thomas's name over and over again. She kept saying something was wrong. She kept saying he was not breathing. William dropped everything and ran to his car. He drove faster than he had ever driven in his life. He ran red lights. He did not care about speed limits. He only cared about getting home to his family. When he got to the house, the ambulance was already there. The paramedics were working on Thomas in the living room. Katherine was sitting on the couch, watching them. She was not crying anymore. She was not making any sound at all. She was just sitting there, staring at her baby. William ran to her and put his arms around her. She felt cold and stiff. She felt like she was not really there anymore. The paramedics worked on Thomas for 20 minutes. They tried everything they could think of. They gave him oxygen. They did chest compressions. They used machines that William did not understand, but nothing worked. Nothing could bring Thomas back. The doctor at the hospital said it was sudden infant death syndrome. He said there was nothing anyone could have done. He said these things just happen sometimes. He said it was not anyone's fault, but Katherine blamed herself anyway. She had been the one to find Thomas that morning. She had gone to wake him up for his morning feeding. She had found him lying still and quiet in his crib. She had picked him up and felt how cold he was. She had tried to wake him up. She had tried everything she could think of, but Thomas was already gone. He had probably been gone for hours. The doctor said babies who die from sudden infant death syndrome usually pass away peacefully in their sleep. He said Thomas would not have suffered. He said Thomas would not have been scared or in pain. He said these things to try to make William and Katherine feel better. But nothing could make them feel better. Nothing could fill the hole that Thomas had left behind. Now they were sitting in the car outside their house, trying to find the courage to go inside. They had to go in eventually. They had to face the empty nursery. They had to see Thomas's crib, and his toys, and his clothes. They had to figure out what to do with all the things that belonged to a baby who would never come home. They had to learn how to live in a house that felt too big and too quiet without Thomas's cries and laughter filling the rooms. Katherine looked at William with tears in her eyes. "We have to do this," she whispered. "Emma needs to come home. She needs her own bed and her own things. We cannot keep living at my mother's house forever." William nodded, but he could not speak. His throat felt tight, and his eyes were burning. He knew Katherine was right, but he also knew that walking through that door was going to be the hardest thing he had ever done in his life. William finally turned off the car engine. The silence felt heavy and scary. Katherine wiped her face with her sleeve and took a deep breath. They both knew they could not sit in the car forever. They had to go inside. They had to face what was waiting for them behind that front door. But neither of them wanted to be the first one to move. Katherine had not been inside the house since the day Thomas died. She had packed a few clothes for herself and Emma that first week, but William had done it. She had waited in the car while he went inside and grabbed what they needed. She could not make herself walk through those rooms. She could not make herself see the nursery where she had found her baby that terrible morning. Every night for 2 months, Katherine had the same dream. She would dream that she was walking into Thomas's room to wake him up for his morning feeding. She would reach into the crib and pick him up. But in the dream, Thomas would open his eyes and smile at her. He would make those sweet baby sounds. That had always made her heart feel full of love. Then she would wake up and remember that it was just a dream. Thomas was never going to smile at her again. William had been back to the house a few times. He had to pay bills and check the mail. He had to make sure everything was okay. But each time he went inside, he stayed for only a few minutes. He would grab what he needed and leave as fast as he could. The house felt like a museum now. Everything was exactly the way they had left it on that Tuesday morning. Emma's cereal bowl was still in the sink. Katherine's coffee cup was still on the counter. Thomas's bottle was still in the refrigerator, waiting to be used. The neighbors had been kind. Mrs. Peterson, from next door, had been taking care of their yard. She had been watering Katherine's flowers and cutting the grass. She had been bringing in their mail and packages. Sometimes William would see her looking at their house with sad eyes. She had known Thomas since the day they brought him home from the hospital. She had watched Emma grow up too. She had been like a grandmother to both children. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson from across the street had left casseroles on their doorstep every week. They never knocked or tried to talk. They just left the food with little notes that said they were thinking of them. William always felt grateful for the food, but he also felt guilty. He felt like they did not deserve such kindness. He felt like they had somehow failed his parents because they could not keep their baby safe. The hardest part was not knowing why it happened. The doctors had done tests. They had asked questions. They had looked at everything they could think of, but there were no answers. Thomas had been a healthy baby. He had been growing well. He had been meeting all his milestones. There was no reason for him to die. No explanation that made any sense. He had just gone to sleep one night and never woken up. Katherine kept thinking about all the things she should have done differently. Maybe she should have checked on him more often during the night. Maybe she should have kept him in their bedroom longer. Maybe she should have noticed something was wrong. The doctor had told her many times that there was nothing she could have done, but Katherine could not stop blaming herself. She was his mother. She was supposed to protect him. She was supposed to keep him safe. William blamed himself too, but for different reasons. He thought maybe if he had been home more, Thomas would still be alive. He had been working long hours trying to save money for the family. He had missed some of Thomas's bath times. He had missed some of his bedtime stories. He had been trying to be a good provider, but maybe he should have been a more present father instead. Emma did not understand why they could not go home. She was too young to understand death in the way that adults do. She knew that Thomas was gone. She knew that he was not coming back. But she did not understand why that meant they had to live somewhere else. She wanted to sleep in her own bed. She wanted to play with her own toys. She wanted everything to go back to the way it was before. Katherine's mother had been patient with all of them. She had made room in her small house for her daughter's family. She had cooked meals that nobody felt like eating. She had listened to Katherine cry for hours every night. She had played games with Emma when William and Katherine could not find the energy to be good parents. But even she was starting to worry about how long this could go on. The grief counselor had told them that everyone grieves differently. She had said there was no right or wrong way to feel sad about losing a child. She had said they needed to be patient with themselves and with each other. But she had also said that at some point they would need to start living again. Not because they loved Thomas any less, but because Emma needed them to be her parents. Again, William looked at the house and remembered all the happy times they had there. He remembered the day they brought Emma home from the hospital. She had been so tiny and perfect. He remembered teaching her to ride her bike in the driveway. He remembered the Christmas mornings when she would run downstairs to see what Santa had brought her. He remembered the day they told her she was going to be a big sister. She had been so excited. She had talked about all the things she was going to teach her. Baby brother Katherine remembered painting the nursery when she was pregnant with Thomas. She and William had spent a whole weekend picking out the perfect shade of blue. They had put up pictures of teddy bears and balloons. They had assembled the crib together. Katherine had washed all of Thomas's tiny clothes and folded them carefully in the dresser drawers. She had dreamed about the day she would bring him home and put him in that beautiful room they had made just for him. Now that room was empty and waiting. All of Thomas's things were still there. His clothes were still in the dresser. His toys were still in the toy box. His mobile was still hanging over the crib. Everything was ready for a baby who would never need any of it again. William and Katherine both knew that before Emma could come home, they would have to decide what to do with Thomas's room. They would have to pack up his things or leave them there or find some other way to deal with the space that had been meant for him. Katherine reached for the door handle. Her hand was shaking, but she forced herself to grab it. "I cannot do this," she said to William. "I cannot walk into that house and see his empty room." But William took her other hand and squeezed it gently. "We will do it together," he said. "We do not have to go into his room today. We just have to go inside. We just have to start somewhere." After spending an hour in Thomas's nursery, William and Katherine knew they could not stay in the house any longer. The silence was too heavy. The memories were too painful. They needed to get some air and clear their heads. But they also knew they could not keep running away from their home forever. Emma needed to come back. She needed her normal life again, even if their lives would never be normal again. Katherine suggested they go get Emma from her mother's house and bring her home for dinner. Maybe if they were all together in the house, it would feel less empty. Maybe Emma's laughter and chatter would fill some of the silence that felt so overwhelming. William agreed, even though he was not sure they were ready to pretend everything was okay for Emma's sake. The drive to Katherine's mother's house took 20 minutes. They did not talk much during the drive. They were both thinking about how they were going to explain to Emma that they were finally ready to come home. They were both worried about how she would react to being back in the house without Thomas. Emma had loved her baby brother so much. She had always wanted to help take care of him. When they arrived at the house, Emma ran to meet them at the door. She had been watching for their car from the living room window. "Mommy, Daddy," she called out as she threw her arms around both of them. "Are we going home now? Can I get my toys and my clothes? I miss my room so much." Katherine hugged her daughter. Titan tried to smile. "Yes, sweetheart," she said. "We are going home today. We are all going to be together in our house again." Emma was so excited she could barely sit still. She ran around her grandmother's house gathering up all her things. She had been living out of a suitcase for 2 months, and she was tired of it. She wanted her own closet and her own dresser. She wanted to sleep in her own bed with her own pillows. She wanted to play in her own backyard and ride her bike in her own driveway. Katherine's mother helped Emma pack her clothes and toys. She was happy that her daughter and granddaughter were finally going home, but she was also worried about them. She had seen how hard it was for William and Katherine to get through each day. She had watched them struggle to eat and sleep and take care of themselves. She was afraid they were not ready to be on their own again. "Are you sure you are ready for this?" she asked. Katherine quietly, while Emma was in the other room. "You have been through so much. Maybe you need more time." Katherine shook her head. "We cannot keep living in the past," she said. "Emma needs her parents to be strong. She needs us to help her move forward, even if we do not know how to do that ourselves." The drive back to their house was different this time. Emma was chattering happily in the back seat about all the things she wanted to do when she got home. She wanted to water the flowers in the garden. She wanted to play on her swing set. She wanted to have a tea party with her dolls in her bedroom. Her excitement was infectious, and for a few minutes William and Katherine almost forgot about their sadness. When they pulled into their driveway, Emma jumped out of the car and ran straight to the front door. "Home!" she shouted. "We are finally home!" She waited impatiently for William to unlock the door, and then she rushed inside. The house immediately felt different with Emma in it. Her energy and joy seemed to push back some of the sadness that had been hanging over everything. Emma ran from room to room, checking to make sure everything was still the same. Her toys were still where she had left them. Her books were still on her shelf. Her art supplies were still in her desk drawer. Everything was exactly as she remembered it. She was so happy to be back in her own space that she did not notice how quiet and sad her parents still looked. Katherine started making dinner while Emma played in her room. It felt strange to be cooking in her own kitchen again. She had forgotten where she kept some of the dishes. She had forgotten which burner on the stove worked the best. Everything felt familiar but also foreign at the same time. She was glad to have something to do with her hands. It helped keep her mind busy. William sat at the kitchen table and watched Katherine cook. He remembered all the family dinners they had shared in this room. Emma would tell them about her day at school. Thomas would be in his high chair trying to eat baby food and making a mess. Katherine would laugh at the funny faces Thomas made when he tasted something new. Those had been such happy times, but they felt like they had happened in another lifetime. Emma came running into the kitchen, asking if she could go visit Thomas. She wanted to show him all the pictures she had drawn for him while they were staying. At Grandma's house, William and Katherine looked at each other, not knowing what to say. They had not talked to Emma about what had happened to Thomas's room. They had not decided whether to pack up his things or leave everything the way it was. Katherine knelt down next to Emma and took her hands. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "Thomas is not in his room anymore. Remember what Grandma told you about how he became an angel? He is watching over us from heaven now, but he is not in his room." Emma's face scrunched up in confusion. "But where are all his toys?" she asked. "Where are his clothes and his crib?" William joined Katherine on the floor next to Emma. "All of Thomas's things are still in his room," he said, "but Thomas does not need them anymore because he is an angel now. We have to decide what to do with his things. Maybe we can give some of them to other babies who need them. Maybe we can keep some of them to remember him by." Emma thought about this for a moment. "Can I help decide?" she asked. "Can I pick which things to keep?" Katherine felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she tried to stay strong for Emma. Of course you can help," she said. "Thomas was your brother, and you loved him very much. We will decide together as a family what to do with his things." Emma nodded seriously. "I want to keep his teddy bear," she said, "the one that looks like mine. And I want to keep the picture book about puppies because I was going to read it to him when he got bigger. That evening." After dinner, Emma wanted to see Thomas's room. William and Katherine were not sure she was ready, but Emma insisted she had drawn a picture for Thomas, and she wanted to put it in his room. The three of them walked down the hallway together and opened the nursery door. Emma stood in the doorway looking at the empty crib and all of Thomas's unused toys. "It is so quiet in here," she said softly. "When Thomas was here, it was not so quiet. He made little baby sounds, and sometimes he cried, but it was not scary quiet like this." Katherine picked up Emma and held her close. "You are right, sweetheart," she said. "The house is much too quiet without Thomas. But we still have each other, and we still have all our love for him." Emma asked if she could put her picture in Thomas's crib. It was a drawing of their whole family, including Thomas as a baby with angel wings. She had drawn it with her favorite crayons and written, "I love you, Thomas," at the bottom in her careful second-grade handwriting. William and Katherine watched as their brave little girl placed her artwork gently on the empty mattress where her baby brother used to sleep. That night was the first night the family had slept in their own house since Thomas died. Emma fell asleep quickly in her own bed, surrounded by all her favorite stuffed animals. She was exhausted from the excitement of coming home and from the emotional day of seeing Thomas's empty room. But William and Katherine lay awake for hours listening to the silence. Every sound in the house seemed too loud, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the air conditioning turning on and off, the old floorboards creaking as the house settled for the night. But the sound they most wanted to hear was missing. There were no baby cries from the nursery, no soft breathing from the baby monitor, no little sighs and movements that told them their son was sleeping peacefully. Katherine got up 3 times during the night. Each time she found herself walking toward Thomas's room before she remembered that he was not there. It had become such a habit over the 7 months of his life. She would wake up and check on him to make sure he was okay. She would adjust his blanket or just stand there watching him sleep. Now her body still remembered those midnight visits, even though her mind knew they were no longer needed. The next morning, Emma woke up happy and excited to be home. She ran downstairs in her pajamas and asked Katherine to make her favorite breakfast. Pancakes with chocolate chips, just like she used to have every Saturday morning before Thomas died. Katherine was grateful to have something normal to do. Making breakfast for Emma felt like a small step toward having a regular family life again. While Katherine cooked breakfast, Emma played in the backyard. She had missed her swing set and her sandbox. She had missed being able to run around in her own yard without having to ask permission or worry about disturbing anyone. William watched her through the kitchen window and remembered how Thomas used to love sitting outside in his bouncy seat watching his big sister play. Emma came running back inside with dirt on her hands and grass stains on her pajamas. She was grinning from ear to ear. "Daddy," she said, tugging on William's shirt, "can we plant flowers for Thomas? Grandma said that when people become angels, sometimes their families plant flowers to remember them. I want to plant blue flowers because blue was Thomas's favorite color." William looked at Katherine, who was standing at the stove with tears in her eyes. "That sounds like a beautiful idea, sweetheart," he said to Emma. "We can go to the garden center this afternoon and pick out some special flowers for Thomas. Maybe we can plant them right outside his bedroom window so he can see them from heaven." After breakfast, they all got dressed and drove to the garden center. Emma was full of questions about which flowers would be best for remembering Thomas. She wanted flowers that would bloom for a long time. She wanted flowers that would smell nice. She wanted flowers that would attract butterflies because she thought Thomas would like watching butterflies dance around his garden. The lady at the garden center was very kind when Emma explained what they were looking for. She showed them several different types of blue flowers that would bloom all summer long. Emma chose forget-me-nots because she said the name was perfect. She never wanted to forget Thomas, even though he was not with them anymore. They also chose some white roses because Katherine said those represented pure love. Back at home, they spent the afternoon preparing the flower garden outside Thomas's bedroom window. William dug up the soil while Katherine and Emma planted the flowers. Emma was very careful with each plant. She talked to them as she put them in the ground. She told them they were special flowers for her baby brother who is an angel now. She told them they needed to grow big and strong and beautiful. When they finished planting, Emma asked if they could have a little ceremony for Thomas. She wanted to say some words about how much they loved him and how much they missed him. They all stood in the new flower garden holding hands while Emma spoke first. "Thomas," she said, looking up at the sky, "these flowers are for you because you are our angel now. We love you so much and we think about you every day." Katherine spoke next. She told Thomas how sorry she was that she could not protect him. She told him how much joy he had brought to their family in his short life. She promised him that they would always remember his sweet smile and his happy baby sounds. She promised him that Emma would always know how much her little brother had loved her. William had trouble finding words at first. His voice was shaky when he finally spoke. "Thomas," he said, "you made us so happy for 7 months. You taught Emma how to be a wonderful big sister. You taught Mommy and me how much love our hearts could hold. We will miss you every day, but we will try to be strong for each other because we know that is what you would want." After the ceremony, they went inside and Emma asked if she could help decide what to do with some of Thomas's things. She was not ready to pack everything up, but she thought maybe they could give some of his clothes to babies who needed them. She remembered how excited she had been when her friend's mom had a new baby. She thought other big sisters might be excited to have some of Thomas's nice clothes for their little brothers, Katherine and Emma. Went through Thomas's dresser together. They set aside the clothes that were too small for him to ever wear. They also set aside some of the toys that were meant for older babies. Emma wanted to keep Thomas's favorite blanket and his special teddy bear. She wanted to keep the mobile that hung over his crib because she liked the way it moved in the breeze. That evening they had dinner together as a family in their own dining room for the first time in 2 months. Emma chattered about her day and about the flowers they had planted. She made plans for all the things she wanted to do now that they were home again. She wanted to have friends over to play. She wanted to help Katherine bake cookies. She wanted William to push her on the swing set. William and Katherine were amazed by their daughter's strength and resilience. Emma was sad about losing Thomas, but she was not letting that sadness stop her from enjoying life. She was teaching them that it was possible to grieve for someone you love while still finding moments of happiness. She was showing them that love does not end when someone dies. After Emma went to bed that night, William and Katherine sat together on the living room couch. They talked about how strange it felt to be home again. They talked about how proud they were of Emma for being so brave and wise. They talked about the flower garden and how beautiful it would look when the plants grew bigger. For the first time since Thomas died, they also talked about the future. They talked about what they wanted Emma's life to be like. They talked about how they could honor Thomas's memory while still building a good life for their surviving child. They talked about the possibility that someday they might be ready to help other families who had lost babies. Katherine curled up next to William, and they held each other in the quiet house. The silence did not feel quite as heavy as it had the night before. Emma's laughter from that day seemed to echo in the rooms. The memory of planting flowers together felt like a small step toward healing. They were beginning to understand that grief would always be part of their lives, but it did not have to be the only part. Outside Thomas's bedroom window, the new flowers were settling into their soil. In the morning, they would begin the slow process of growing and blooming. Just like William and Katherine and Emma, they would need time and care and patience. But eventually, they would bring beauty and life to a place that had known only sadness. 3 weeks had passed since William and Katherine brought Emma home. The flower garden outside Thomas's bedroom window was starting to bloom. Small blue forget-me-nots were opening their tiny faces to the sun. The white roses were beginning to show their first buds. Emma checked on the flowers every morning before school and every afternoon when she came home. She would water them carefully and tell them about her day. The house was starting to feel like home again, but it was a different kind of home now. There were still moments when Katherine would automatically set out for plates for dinner before, remembering they only needed 3. There were still times when William would hear a baby crying on television and think for just a second that it was Thomas. But there were also moments when they could laugh at something Emma said without feeling guilty about being happy. Emma had gone back to school the week before. Her teacher, Mrs. Martinez, had been very understanding about everything that had happened. She had talked to the other children in the class about how sometimes families go through very sad times. She had made sure that Emma felt supported and loved when she returned to her classroom. Emma was glad to see her friends again and to get back to learning new things. On this particular morning, something special was going to happen. Katherine's sister Sarah was coming to visit with her own 2 young children. Sarah had stayed away for the past few months because she was not sure if seeing other people's babies would be too painful for William and Katherine. But Emma had been asking to see her cousins, and Katherine had finally said she was ready for the visit. Sarah arrived just after lunch with 4-year-old Michael and 2-year-old baby Lucy. Emma was so excited to see her cousins that she could barely contain herself. She had missed playing with other children. She had missed the noise and chaos that came with having little kids around. The house immediately felt more alive, with children's voices filling the rooms. Michael ran straight to Emma's room to see all her toys. He had always looked up to his older cousin, and he had missed her during the months when they could not visit. Lucy toddled around the living room, exploring everything with her curious little hands. She was just learning to walk, and everything in the house was new and interesting to her. Katherine watched Lucy stumble around the room and felt a sharp pain in her chest. Thomas would have been crawling by now if he had lived. He would have been getting into everything just like Lucy was doing. He would have been pulling himself up on furniture and trying to take his first steps. Katherine had to sit down for a moment and take some deep breaths, Sarah noticed her sister's reaction and quietly picked up Lucy. She carried the baby into the kitchen where they could talk privately. "I am sorry," she said to Katherine. "I was not sure if this would be too hard for you. We can leave if you need us to." Katherine shook her head. "No," she said. "I want you here. I need to learn how to be around babies again. Lucy is beautiful, and seeing her does hurt, but it also reminds me that life continues." William came home from work early that afternoon because he wanted to see Sarah and the children. He had been working shorter hours since Thomas died because he realized how important it was to spend time with his family. He did not want to miss any more moments with Emma. He did not want to take for granted the time they had together. When William walked through the front door, he heard children laughing and playing. For just a moment, it sounded like the house used to sound when Thomas was alive. There had always been some kind of happy noise in their home back then. Emma talking or singing, Thomas babbling or crying, the television playing children's shows. Now the house was usually quiet, except for Emma's voice. Emma ran to greet William at the door. Daddy," she said excitedly. "Michael and Lucy are here, and we have been playing games all afternoon. Lucy tried to eat my crayons, but I stopped her just in time. Michael helped me build a castle with my blocks. It has been the best day ever." William smiled at his daughter's enthusiasm. It had been so long since he had seen her this happy and energetic. That evening, they all had dinner together in the dining room. The table felt full and lively with 5 people around it instead of just 3. Michael chattered constantly about everything he could think of. Lucy made happy baby sounds and threw pieces of her food on the floor. Emma giggled at everything. Her cousins did. The children played in the living room while the adults cleaned up the kitchen. Sarah told Katherine how proud she was of how well she was handling everything. "You are so much stronger than you think you are," she said. "I know this is the hardest thing anyone could ever go through, but you are finding ways to keep living, and that takes incredible courage." Tears in her eyes, but they were different kinds of tears than she had been crying for months. These were not tears of pure sadness. They were tears of gratitude for her sister's love and support. They were tears of hope that maybe things really could get better someday. They were tears of recognition that she was stronger than she had thought she could be. When it was time for Sarah and the children to leave, Emma was disappointed. She begged her cousins to stay longer. She wanted to show Lucy more toys. She wanted to read Michael another story. But it was getting late, and the little ones needed to go home to their own beds. Emma hugged both her cousins tightly and made them promise to come back soon. After Sarah left, William and Katherine sat with Emma in the living room. The house felt quiet again, but it was not the scary, empty quiet they had gotten used to. It was a peaceful quiet. Emma was tired from all the excitement, but she was also happy. She curled up between her parents on the couch and yawned. "Today was really fun," she said sleepily. "I like it when the house is full of people and noise. It reminds me of when Thomas was here." "Do you think he could see us today? Do you think he liked watching Michael and Lucy play?" Katherine stroked Emma's hair gently. "I think Thomas loved seeing you so happy today," she said. "I think he likes knowing that we can still have good days even though we miss him." That night after Emma went to bed, William and Katherine walked outside to look at Thomas's flower garden. The forget-me-nots were glowing softly in the moonlight. The rosebuds looked like they would open any day now. The garden was becoming more beautiful every day, just like they had hoped it would. Standing there in the quiet night air, they both realized something important had happened that day. They had gotten through a whole day with other people's children. Without falling apart, they had laughed and smiled and enjoyed themselves without feeling guilty about it. They had started to understand that loving Thomas and missing him did not mean they had to stop living. They also realized that Emma was going to be okay. She was resilient and strong and full of love. She would always miss her baby brother, but she would not let that loss define her whole life. As they stood looking at the flowers they had planted for their son, tomorrow would bring new challenges, and there would still be days when the grief felt overwhelming. But tonight, they felt something they had not felt in months. They felt hope.